van Tilburg for National Security News. Beyond the visceral violence in the Israel-Hamas war lies a hidden layer, an online conflict. It is an unseen facet of the war. The consequences of this are not only felt by government institutions, but also by civilians. And to shed light on how Hamas targets Israel through cyber means, we have Alberto Casares, the Chief Technological Officer of Constella Intelligence, a digital risk protection company. Alberto, can we start by asking, well, where are these cyber attacks being launched from? Are they originating in Gaza, the West Bank, or from outside Israel?
I think that those attacks are happening probably because of multiple reasons, right? So typically behind those attacks there are model that is geopolitical model. What the threat actors typically are doing, so they do several things. The first thing is that they typically scan some infrastructures from Israel by looking at the TLDs. In the case of Israel, it's IL, right? Typically, right, or governmental institutions, infrastructures, and so on. And they typically will try to find some vulnerabilities by using some tools that they can automatically scan if they have some vulnerability. So that's a classical approach. But what we have been seeing in the last few months is that these threat actors are using other type of techniques that are more focused to target citizens and critical infrastructure. In some cases, they use information compromised from what is called infostealer, so which is a malware that is getting the information from a compromised device. So what they do typically is they host that malware in certain software. It could be, for example, a pirate program, a crack of a video game, for the victim to basically they wait for the victim to click download that malicious software, and then the victim gets infected. Once that happens, the threat actor gets like an alert on their side saying that there is a new victim, and then they analyze the information and that has been compromised. Through these infostealers attacks, what is happening is that those threat actors and cyber criminals, they know because they host or they launch specific campaigns against citizens from Israel. So they know that the victim is going to be a victim from Israel, and then they analyze as I said, the information is filtered by the infostealer. This infostealer has access to the browser history, the passwords that have been stored, apart from the cookies, which are super important, and some critical and confidential documents that might be stored in the compromised device. With all that information, the threat actor can bypass multi-factor authentications and hijack accounts. So this is a really sophisticated type of attack, but it's really easy to launch. So actually, there are many tutorials about how to do that and how easy it is to even buy a license of those infostealers malware and host that in any place or any software on the internet.
Who are the perpetrators between these information stealing attacks? Are they individuals or nation-state actors?
There are different threat actor groups that are creating those, evolving those families, and they are basically selling the different versions of those families on the internet as a subscription model. Basically, you pay for the software, for the license of the software, the malicious software, plus all the updates and so on. Once you get the software, that malicious software, you can host that malicious software whenever you want. What's the challenge or the risk here is that there are many groups that are buying different families of those malicious software. They are utilizing those families of malicious software, and in order to target different countries or to launch different campaigns.
So what is the primary motive behind these attacks? Are they political, or is it financially motivated?
both, right? Because we have seen that there are some sellers that are nation state hackers. Typically, we cannot prove that, but according to the names, how they operate, and so on, we think that are the nation state hackers. There are others that are even what is called in the community like script kiddies, which are junior hackers. Because I have, as I have said at the beginning, so this is really easy to launch. You can go to a Telegram group. You can find this so easily. You can buy one of those licenses. So just a person, an internet user with basic knowledge can actually subscribe, buy that malicious software and start infecting victims. So there are different groups. So what we have seen related to Israel and Palestine is that these groups, right, in both sides, they are using this type of technique, right, to infect and target citizens. There is always an economic motive, right, behind all these things, because the first thing is that they have to pay the bills, right? So they have to get a way of getting revenue, right? But there is a political behind this. Why? Because if there is a cyber war, well, if there is a physical war, there is always in parallel a cyber war. This is what we see always, right, with Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, and Russia, and any other war. And there are many groups with a political affiliation that start using this technique because it's really easy to launch to target the enemy, right, the country. So by using this is one of those techniques. They can actually get access to some critical infrastructures, to some companies' data information, start exfiltrating that information, and then the problem is started to be bigger and bigger, because once they start targeting a country, they will try to get through this mechanism victims from that country and exploiting that information, right? And try to understand if that person works in a certain company, and then target through that person the company, so that they can get access to the company data information, to even depending on if the attack has been successful or not, they can exfiltrate confidential information from one specific organization. If that's the case, that information could go to a different buyer or a criminal group. So we have seen that as part of the underground economy, what is happening is that some cyber criminals are in charge. They have the role to infect. Others, they have the role to exploit that data. Others have the role to try to provide some critical information or confidential information, sensitive information, in other words, to the probably the nation, right? So to the government, right? In order to even for espionage and this type of things, we have seen that this process, is happening. Right?
What are the financial gains for these attackers?
Could be from $200 a month to even thousands or even 100,000, depending on the sophistication of the first dealers. So if we are talking about even some classical families, you can even get some of this information even for free, because there are some groups that are sharing this information in different places with the intention of emphasize or the damage, right? Because if you make this information for public, you are gonna get a lot of threat actors getting that information and finding other ways to exploit or use that information as a weapon to target the country or the citizens or critical infrastructures. Right?
How has Israel adapted its cyber strategies to counter these attacks?
Yeah, I think that in order to fight this, you have to do several things. I don't know what is Israel doing on purpose, right? Specifically, but I guess that is a common standard that, first of all, you have to do a lot of awareness, because, as I said, most part of these infections are happening because of, the victim clicks or downloads a pirate program, a crack of a video game, this type of things, right? But it's also true that we have seen some cases where this information is being housed in legit PDF files, in legit documents that threat actors are copying from, even legitimate sites, and they are hosting that malware, right, in order to try to make this more credible, right? So the first thing is awareness, as I was saying, right? So it's very important to make sure that you are not downloading or clicking in the wrong site. So that's one thing. The second thing is making sure that you have your software updated, right, up to date, and you are using antiviruses and this type of thing. So this is a classical approach. And finally, of course, you can bring more level or a different level of sophistication by analyzing and investigating who are the main players, if those attacks are happening on purpose, are happening because of part of a massive attack and nothing to do with a geopolitical situation, because that's the reality. So some of the threat actors are targeting worldwide without any specific political relation, right? But classical mechanisms, as I was saying, so are typically the most well used, right, in this particular case.
Are any of the groups involved based in the United States?
I don't know 100% sure because I will have to do attribution, but they are typically distributed worldwide, right? So as you know, today in this era, you can remotely work from wherever. So they probably they're gonna be hackers or cyber threat actor groups worldwide. But in the specific case of Israel and Palestine, probably they are gonna be in the same country, right? Or in countries that are nearby, right? And so we have seen that this has happened with Ukraine and Russia, right? Some of the threat actor groups are not really in Russia, so they are in other countries that are pro-Russia. Same thing, I guess, that is happening with this. Could be in Iran, could be in other countries. It's really more probable that they are close to their countries.
Well, can you explain the process? So if someone supports Hamas, do they find these groups on the dark web or platforms like Telegram to rent a license for info stealing malware to target, say, the Israeli Defense Force or critical infrastructure?
Yeah, so basically it's a way easier to target a country outside of the country, not being physically in that country, because you can do that by using this technique, which is just one. There are others that we can cover as well, but this is one of them, and it's been super successful. We have seen several cases in the last few weeks where how basically cyber criminal groups pro Hamas are targeting Israel and vice versa as well, right? So this is happening, yeah.
Is Israel also engaged in cyber attacks against Hamas?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is happening in both directions, as is happening in the physical world. So it's exactly the same approach. So they target critical infrastructure. Some of those attacks are visible. Some of those attacks are basically not visible, meaning that maybe they are infiltrated in some of these groups, Telegram groups and channels, private channels, and so on. And in many cases, in both cases, will be monitoring and spying what is happening in order to understand what is if there is going to happen a new attack and the orchestration of the attack. Right.
Well, what does a company like Constello do? Can they actively pursue and counter these info stealers?
No, we don't go off. We don't target. We monitor what is happening, and we get essentially the same information that is in hands of the threat actors in order to protect and try to mitigate future attacks, right? Because it's very important. One of the big issues that are happening after being a victim of an info stealer is that it's probably is surprising for most of the people that in average those info stealers are getting access to more than 100 different credentials and logins and so on, right? Apart from the browser history and so on. So if you don't know exactly what's the information in hands of the threat actors, it's really impossible, in my experience, to protect, because you are always going to have an entry point, your surface of attack. If it is unknown, you don't know how the threat actor is going to utilize that information to target you, right? So as an example, so if as part of that infostealer infection, I'm a victim of that, maybe I'm aware that my credentials, my corporate credentials have been compromised, and probably my company is going to even notify me about that because there is an authorized intention of logging in my corporate network. I'll get that, right? Really immediately, right? But what else? What happens if, for example, my personal email has been compromised, or my LinkedIn account has been compromised, and I'm not aware of that. So at any moment, the threat actor can actually hijack my, for example, LinkedIn account and start spreading malware, or using my account to target other, employees of the organization, people from my network, and so on. And it's going to be really difficult for me to really stop the threat, because it could be really damaging, right?
Do you have specific examples of Hamas targeting Israel or vice versa?
I know that there are, as well as is happening with, different waves of attacks happening at the same time. As I said, one case is the infostealer infections, but there are other cases where we see that there are ways of defacements. Defacement is basically, threat actor groups targeting sites from vulnerable sites from Israel, right? As a way of saying that we have the power to deface. Deface is basically a hacking, right? They get access to the source code or to the website, and they can modify the content of the website, right? So, and they put some political messages, typically, just to claim that they were able to do that. So basically, in most of the cases, this is happening to small, medium-sized type of companies, right? In both sides, right? So it's really probable that we can find those examples, and typically those waves are happening at the same time, right? So they launch and they coordinate the attacks, and they do this type of as a message, right? As a political message, that they are able to target in the cyberspace one country.
Do you have any statistics on the frequency of these cyber attacks? Do they happen daily, weekly, or is there a recent surge in activity?
We can see, from Costella, we have the capability to look at the breach data. So basically, we can every day understand how many breaches are happening in every country. So we are getting hundreds of breaches a day, right? So we have more than 400,000 different breaches worldwide, right? So at that level, we can do that. But in the cyberspace, there are DDoS attacks that are happening. We don't have that type of information, but there are tools that, even open source tools that are showing that type of kind of threat map, if you will, right, in real time, right? So you will see that there are massive scans, massive DDoS attacks. And when I say massive scan, is basically infrastructure that is analyzing the sites from specific countries in order to try to identify which are the entry points, if there are vulnerabilities and so on, right? So there are different type of attacks. We are really specialized on breaching information, infrastructure information, and we can see that at that level. And I can tell you that, as I said, hundreds of breaches are happening every day, and we see waves, right, of those attacks.
Well, how many breaches are happening daily?
Well, it's not like continuous, because it's happening. One week could be Israel and Palestine. This is what we have seen a few weeks ago. But right now, for example, we are seeing a wave started in South Korea, and it seems that is related to an event that happened there, right? So those waves are changing, are not always the same because of the war. So even in the war, as is happening in the physical and traditional classical war, so those waves of attacks are not sustained in the time, right? So maybe there are peaks that are happening, and we see those peaks. Yeah, we see hundreds of breaches a day, but we have a total of more than 400,000 breaches, right? Not taking into account infostealers. Infostealers, I'm not considering this as a breach, right?
Alberto, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Yeah, thank you.